The door you are searching for has already been opened. You just haven't stepped through it yet. And that is because you are still looking for the bridge, for the pathway, for the means by which that door might be reached. You stand outside of what you desire, asking how it could ever come to you, when in truth, the question itself is the very thing that keeps you standing outside. The end holds the key, not the beginning, not the middle, not the journey. The end, the not the beginning, not the middle, not the beginning. Neville Goddard understood this as few have ever understood anything, and what I am about to share with you today is perhaps the most quietly revolutionary thing he ever taught. The end contains everything, everything, the entire bridge of incidents, the chain of events, the unfolding of circumstances that will bring about your desire. All of it is already contained within the end itself, folded into the imaginal act, the moment you dare to assume it is finished. You do not need to see the bridge in advance. You do not need to know the how. In fact, your insistence on knowing the how is what prevents the bridge from assembling itself. The moment you occupy the end, the moment you feel yourself to be the one for whom it is already done, the entire structure of reality begins to rearrange itself to match that assumption. Not because you have manipulated anything, but because consciousness is the only reality, and what you are conscious of being, you are. So if the end holds the key, then why are you still searching for the door? Let us walk through it together. Welcome. If this is your first time here, you have arrived at exactly the right moment. This channel exists for one reason only, to bring you into direct contact with the teachings of Neville Goddard, not as philosophy, not as theory, but as living truth that you can test tonight in the silence of your own consciousness. Today we are going deep into one of Neville's most misunderstood and most liberating principles. The end contains everything. By the time we finish, you will understand why the end state does not need a bridge you can see in advance, and you will know how to let go of the how so that the bridge can assemble itself naturally, invisibly, perfectly. This is not about blind faith. This is about understanding the mechanics of consciousness, and then daring to apply them. Stay with me. This will change how you imagine from this day forward. Let us begin with the first truth. You have been taught to think forward from where you are. This is the way the outer mind works. It looks at present circumstances and then projects outward from those circumstances, asking how they might lead somewhere else. If you want a new job, the outer mind begins to list the steps. Update your resume. Search for openings. Apply. Interview. Wait. Hope. If you want a relationship, the outer mind calculates. Where will I meet them? What do I need to change about myself first? What if I am not ready? What if they do not come? And this kind of thinking feels responsible, feels reasonable, because it is based on what appears to be true right now. But Neville tells you plainly, the outer world is already a result. It is the fruit, not the seed. It is the effect, not the cause. To begin with present circumstances and try to reason your way forward is to begin with the result and hope it will somehow change itself. It will not. Results do not produce new results. Only consciousness produces results. So the entire approach must be reversed. You do not begin where you are. You begin where you want to be. You start from the end. Now, this is not merely positive thinking. This is not pretending. What Neville is giving you is the structure of creation itself. Consciousness creates reality. That is the foundation. And consciousness does not create through wishful thinking or through effort in the outer world. Consciousness creates through assumption. An assumption, if persisted in, hardens into fact. That is the law. It has always been the law. And the way you assume is not by affirming something you do not believe, but by occupying the state of the wish fulfilled, by thinking from the end rather than thinking of the end. There is a world of difference between those two. When you think of the end, you are still standing outside of it, looking at it as something separate, something you hope to reach someday. When you think from the end, you are already there. You are looking out at the world from the state of having already received. And that shift, that movement in consciousness, is what changes everything. Imagine for a moment that you desire a particular home, a specific place where you long to live. If you think of that home, you picture it, you admire it, you hope for it. but you remain outside. You are the person who does not yet live there, wishing you did. But if you think from that home, you are inside it. You feel the floor beneath your feet. You hear the sounds of that space. You know the way the light falls through the window in the morning. You are not imagining being there someday. You are there now. In consciousness is the only reality. The outer world has no choice but to conform. This is not magic. This is law. The outer world is nothing more than the hardened residue of your inner convictions. Change the inner, and the outer must follow. It has no other option. Neville tells the story, again and again in different forms, of people who dared to assume the end without knowing how it could ever come to pass. There was the woman who wanted to move to a particular house in a neighborhood she loved, a house that was not for sale and whose owners had no intention of selling. She did not know how she could ever live there. She did not see a bridge. But she heard Neville speak, and she understood. Every night she fell asleep, imagining herself in that house, not hoping to be there, not wishing she were there. She was there. She felt the rooms around her. She moved through the space as though it were already hers. She did this faithfully, without asking how, without looking for signs, without wavering. And within a matter of weeks, a chain of events unfolded that no one could have predicted. The owners had a sudden change in their circumstances. They needed to sell quickly. The price dropped to exactly what she could afford. She walked through the door of that house as its owner, and only then did she see the bridge that had been invisibly assembling itself the entire time. But she did not need to see it in advance. The end contained the bridge. Her assumption contained the means. This is what you must understand. The end is not just the final scene. The end is the seed that contains the entire tree. When you plant the seed of the wish fulfilled in your consciousness, you are not just imagining the outcome. You are setting into motion every event, every conversation, every chance encounter, every shift in circumstance that will be required to bring that outcome into being. You are not creating those events consciously. You are not deciding who will call you or what opportunity will appear. That is not your job. Your job is to assume the end, to occupy the state, to be the one for whom it is already finished. The bridge builds itself. The how takes care of itself. Consciousness, which is infinite and contains all things, arranges the means. You do not need to see it. You only need to be it. But here is where most people stumble. They hear this teaching, and they try to apply it, but they do not truly let go. They assume the end, yes, but then they immediately begin searching for the bridge. They imagine the wish fulfilled at night, and then they wake up in the morning and start looking for evidence. Has anything changed? Is the door opening yet? Who do I need to contact? What action should I take? And in that searching they have already stepped out of the end. They have returned to the state of the one who does not yet have, the one who is still waiting, still wondering how. And so the bridge disappears, not because it was never there, but because they are no longer standing in the state that summons it. Neville says over and over, you must dare to assume that you already are the one you want to be, not that you will be. That you are, now, in this moment, and you must persist in that assumption regardless of what the outer world is showing you, because the outer world is always showing you the old assumption, the state you were in yesterday, last week, last year. It is always a few steps behind. The outer world does not lead. It follows. So if you react to present circumstances as though they are the truth, if you let them pull you out of the state of the wish fulfilled, you are simply recreating those same circumstances over and over again. You are building a bridge back to where you were, rather than allowing the bridge forward to where you are going. Let go of the how. Let go of the need to see the path. Let go of the need to understand in advance what must happen for your desire to come to pass. That understanding will come, but it will come after, not before. First you assume. First you occupy the end. First you become in consciousness the one for whom it is already done. And then, as you walk forward in that assumption, the bridge appears beneath your feet. Not all at once, not in a way you can map out ahead of time, but step by step, moment by moment, the way opens. The invitation comes. The opportunity presents itself. The person you needed to meet crosses your path. And you will look back and see that every single thing that happened, even the things that seemed like setbacks at the time, were part of the bridge. They were part of the invisible architecture that was assembling itself to match your assumption. I want to tell you another story, one that Neville loved to share because it demonstrated this principle so perfectly. There was a man who desperately wanted to go to Barbados. He lived in New York, and he had no money for the trip, no vacation time, no logical reason to believe he could go. But he had heard Neville's teaching, and he decided to test it. Every night he would lie in his bed and imagine that he was in Barbados. He did not imagine that he was in Barbados. He did not imagine booking a ticket. He did not imagine packing a suitcase. He imagined the end. He felt the warm air. He heard the sound of the ocean. He felt himself lying in a bed in Barbados, knowing that he was there. He did this night after night, faithfully, without asking how it could ever happen. And then one day his employer called him into the office. The company was opening a new location in Barbados, and they needed someone to go down there for several months to help set it all up. All expenses paid. The man was stunned, but Neville was not. The end had contained the means. The assumption had assembled the bridge. This is the secret. The end holds the key, not because there is some hidden mechanism you need to unlock, but because the end is the seed, and the seed contains the entire pattern of its own unfolding. You do not need to know what that pattern will look like. You do not need to control it or predict it or figure it out. You only need to plant the seed, to assume the wish fulfilled, and then let consciousness, which is infinite intelligence, do what it does naturally. It grows the tree. It arranges the circumstances, which is infinite intelligence, do what it does naturally. It builds the bridge. It arranges the circument, all by itself. Your job is not to make it happen. Your job is to assume it is already done, and then allow reality to conform to that assumption. Now let us go deeper, because there is a second truth here that Neville understood, and it is this. The reason you cannot see the bridge in advance is because the bridge does not yet exist. It will not exist until you call it into being through your assumption. The world is not a fixed, predetermined place where all possible futures already exist and you are simply choosing between them. The world is yourself pushed out. It is the reflection of your state of consciousness. And until you change your state, until you occupy the end, the bridge that would lead you there has no reason to exist. It is your assumption that creates it, not out of nothing, but out of the infinite possibilities that are always present in consciousness. The moment you claim the end, the moment you become in imagination the one for whom it is already finished, consciousness begins to select from infinite possibilities the exact sequence of events that will make that end manifest in your outer world. But it selects them according to your state, not according to your hopes or wishes or half-hearted affirmations. If you are in the state of having, the bridge appears. If you are in the state of wanting, the bridge remains a wish. This is why Neville always said, live in the end, not visit the end, not think about the end, live there. Make it your dwelling place. In the Gospel of John it is written, if you abide in me, and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. Neville understood that to abide means to dwell, to remain, to take up residence. It is not enough to imagine the wish fulfilled once and then return to your old state. You must abide in the new state. You must abide in the new state. You must live there in consciousness. Think from there, feel from there, speak from there. And when you do, the words that abide in you, the inner conversations, the feelings, the assumptions, all of them will be aligned with the wish fulfilled. And then, whatever you ask, meaning whatever you claim in consciousness, will be done. Not because you have pleased some external God, but because you have become in consciousness the thing you desired, and the outer world has no choice but to reflect that. But abiding requires letting go. You cannot abide in the end if you are constantly running back to check on the beginning. You cannot live in the state of the wish fulfilled if you are constantly measuring the distance between where you appear to be and where you want to be. That measurement is a denial of the end. It is a statement that you are not yet there. And as long as you make that statement, as long as you hold that assumption, you are building a bridge to more waiting, more distance, more lack. The bridge you need will never appear because you are not standing in the place that requires it. You are standing in the place that requires it. You are standing in the place that requires nothing, because you are still trying to figure out how to get somewhere else. Let go of the how, completely, absolutely, with finality. The how is none of your concern. The how belongs to the infinite intelligence of consciousness, which knows every possible path, every hidden door, every unlikely connection, every perfect timing. You do not have that knowledge, and you do not need it. What you need is to be so firmly established in the end, so completely identified with the one who already has what you desire, that the question of how never even arises. When you truly live in the end, you are not wondering how it will come. You are simply living as though it is already here, because in consciousness it is. There is a passage in Scripture that Neville loved to quote. In the book of Hebrews it says, "Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." Most people read that and think faith is belief in something invisible, a kind of hopeful confidence. But Neville tells you what it truly means. Faith in the original Greek is hypostasis. It means substance, foundation, underlying reality. Faith is not belief in something that might happen. Faith is the inner conviction that it has already happened. It is the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And that feeling is substance. It is real. It is the evidence of the thing, even though it is not yet seen in the outer world. When you feel yourself to be the one who already has, that feeling is the substance, and the outer form will follow. The bridge will assemble itself from that substance. But you must give it the substance first. You must assume the end so completely that it becomes the ground you stand on, the foundation of your inner world. And then the outer world, which is always reflecting the inner, has no choice but to conform. Now I want to speak to the fear that arises when you first hear this teaching, because there is a fear, and it is this. If I let go of the how, if I stop trying to figure out the path, if I stop planning and controlling and managing every detail, then nothing will happen. I will just sit here imagining, and the world will go on without me, and I will never get what I want. That fear is understandable, but it is based on a false premise. The premise is that you are a separate individual in a world that is indifferent to you, and that if you do not push and strive and figure everything out, the world will leave you behind. But that premise is the very illusion that keeps you bound. You are not separate. You are not in a world. You are the world. The world is yourself pushed out. Every circumstance, every person, every opportunity, every so-called chance event, all of it is your consciousness made visible. So when you change your consciousness, when you assume the state of the wish fulfilled, the world does not ignore you. It cannot. It must change because you have changed. The bridge does not need your effort. It needs your assumption. In fact, Neville tells you plainly that trying to build the bridge yourself, trying to force the how, is the surest way to block it. Because when you are striving and planning and controlling, you are acting from the state of the one who does not yet have. You are acting from lack. And consciousness always produces after its kind, if you are acting from lack. And consciousness always produces after its kind. If you are in the state of lack, your actions will produce more lack. If you are in the state of the wish fulfilled, your actions, which will arise naturally and effortlessly, will produce fulfillment. But those actions will not look like struggle. They will not feel like effort. They will feel like inspiration, like intuition, like the next obvious step. And you will take them not because you are trying to make something happen, but because you are already the person for whom it has happened. And this is simply what that person does. I have seen this in my own life, and in the lives of countless others who have applied Neville's teaching. The moment you truly let go of the how, the moment you stop trying to figure out the path, and instead occupy the end, something shifts. Opportunities appear that were not there before. People reach out to you unexpectedly. Doors open in ways you never could have planned, and you realize that the bridge was always there, waiting to be called into form by your assumption. But it could not appear as long as you were standing in the state of the one who was trying to build it yourself. The bridge builds itself. Let it. Neville told a story about a woman who wanted to marry a particular man. She was in love with him, but he seemed completely uninterested in marriage. He had even said directly that he did not want to get married, that he was happy with his life as it was. She came to Neville heartbroken, convinced that there was no bridge, no possible way for this to happen. And Neville told her, "Do not concern yourself with his present state. His present state is simply his present assumption. It is not fixed. It is not final. You occupy the state of being his wife. You feel yourself to be married to him. You think from that end, and if you persist, his state will change because the world is yourself pushed out. He is not separate from you. He is your consciousness made visible. Change your consciousness, and he must change. She did not believe him at first, but she had nothing to lose, so she tried it. Every night she imagined herself as his wife. She felt the ring on her finger. She heard him call her by that name. She lived in that state in consciousness. And she let go of the how. She did not try to convince him. She did not try to change him. She simply assumed the end. And within a few months he proposed. He said that he had suddenly realized he could not live without her, that marriage was the only thing that made sense. She told Neville later that she would never have believed it if she had not lived it. The bridge had assembled itself perfectly, invisibly, without her effort. This is the law. It works every single time, without exception, if you dare to apply it. And the reason it works is because consciousness is the only reality. There is nothing else. There is no outer world that is independent of your consciousness. There is no person who is separate from your assumption of them. There is no circumstance that can stand against your inner conviction. When you truly understand this, when you know beyond doubt that the world is yourself pushed out, then letting go of the how becomes easy, because you realize that the how is not something you need to create. It is something that is created automatically the moment you assume the end. The bridge is built by the same power that turns the seed into the tree, the same intelligence that moves the planets, the same consciousness that holds all things in being. That power is your own consciousness, and it is infinite. Trust it. Occupy the end, and let it do what it does naturally. There is a phrase Neville used often, borrowed from William Blake. He would say, "We become what we behold yourself as the one who is still trying to get what you want, you remain that one. If you behold yourself as the one who already has it, you become that one." And becoming is not a future event. It is a present shift. You become it now, in consciousness, and the outer world catches up. So the question is not, how will I get there? The question is, who am I choosing to be right now? Am I the one who is waiting, or am I the one who has already received? Am I the one who is searching for the bridge, or am I the one who has already received? Am I the one who has already crossed it? You decide, not with words but with feeling, not with thought but with assumption. And once you decide, once you claim the end and refuse to return to the beginning, the bridge appears, not because you have earned it, not because you have figured it out, but because it is the law. The end contains the means, always, without fail. Now let us move from understanding to practice, because understanding without application is worthless. You can know all of this intellectually and still live in the state of lack if you do not actually assume the end. So I'm going to walk you through exactly how to do this, step by step, in a way that you can apply tonight, right before you fall asleep. This is the most powerful time to impress your consciousness, because in the state between waking and sleeping, the outer mind with all its doubts and questions and need for logic begins to fade, and the inner mind, which is consciousness itself, becomes receptive. Neville called this state the state akin to sleep, or SATS, and he taught that this is the state in which you plant the seed of the wish fulfilled most effectively. Here is what you do. Tonight, as you lie in your bed and feel yourself beginning to drift towards sleep, do not let your mind wander into all the concerns of the day or all the things you need to do tomorrow. Instead, bring your attention to the thing you desire, not to the lack of it, not to the question of how it could ever come, but to the question of how it could ever come, but to the end, to the state of already having it. Now construct a simple scene, a single, short, implied action that would naturally occur if your desire were already fulfilled. It should be something sensory, something you can feel and hear and touch, in imagination. It should be brief, just a few seconds, and it should imply that the wish is already fulfilled. It should not be the moment of receiving. It should be after that moment of receiving. It should be after that moment. You are living in the state of the one who already has. For example, if you desire a new home, do not imagine searching for it. Do not imagine signing papers or moving boxes. Imagine yourself in that home, perhaps lying in bed in your new bedroom, feeling the comfort of that specific space around you, hearing sounds that confirm you are there. Maybe you hear your partner say goodnight from the next room, and the walls around you are the walls of your new home. Or perhaps you simply feel the texture of a staircase railing that exists only in that house, and you know as you touch it that this is your home now. It is simple, it is sensory, it is calm. It does not contain the entire journey. It contains the end. If you desire a relationship, Do not imagine the first date or the moment they say yes. Imagine a moment that would only happen if you are already together. Perhaps you feel their hand in yours as you walk, and you hear them laugh at something you said. And the feeling of intimacy and comfort is so natural that it is clear you have been together for a while. Or perhaps you simply feel them lying next to you, and you hear the sound of their breathing, and you know without question that they are yours and you are theirs. If you desire a new career or a financial change, do not imagine applying or interviewing or checking your bank account for the first time. Imagine something that implies it is already done. Perhaps you feel yourself sitting at a new desk in a new office, and you handle an object that belongs to that space. Or perhaps you hear a friend congratulate you on your success, and you feel the quiet satisfaction of knowing it has already happened. The scene should be short, simple, and repeatable. Once you have constructed it, you loop it in your imagination. You feel it over and over, gently, calmly, without strain. You are not trying to make anything happen. You are simply experiencing in imagination what it would feel like if it were already done, and as you loop this scene, you allow yourself to drift into sleep inside of it. You fall asleep feeling the wish fulfilled. You fall asleep in the end, and that is the seed. That is the assumption being planted in consciousness. You do not need to do anything else. You do not need to affirm or visualize all day long. You do not need to look for signs. You simply assume the end at night. Feel it as real, fall asleep in it, and then go about your day as the one for whom it is already finished. During the day, if doubt arises, if the question of how begins to surface, do not fight it. Do not argue with it. Simply return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Remember the scene you imagined. Remember the feeling of it being done, and let that feeling of it being done, and let that feeling replace the doubt. You are not trying to convince yourself of anything. You are simply choosing which state you will occupy. Will you occupy the state of the one who is still waiting, or the state of the one who has already received? Or the state of the one who has already received? You choose with your attention. Where you place your attention, there you are. So place it in the end. Live there, dwell there, and let the bridge build itself. This is not a one-time exercise, this is a practice. You do it night after night until the feeling becomes natural, until the assumption hardens into fact. And how long will that take? Neville says it takes as long as it takes for you to be fully convinced. The moment you are no longer wondering if it will happen, the moment you simply know that it has happened, the outer world conforms. And that knowing comes from persistence in the state, not from effort, not from straining, but from gently, faithfully returning to the end over and over again until you live there permanently. I will tell you this. The bridge will begin to assemble long before you see the final outcome. You will notice small shifts, a conversation that opens a door you did not know existed, an unexpected message, a change in someone's behavior, a sudden idea that feels obvious. These are not coincidences. These are fragments of the bridge appearing. Do not analyze them. Do not try to figure out if they are leading where you want to go. They are. Trust the process. Stay in the end, and let the bridge complete itself in its own time, in its own way. Now let us zoom out for a moment, because there is something much larger happening here than the fulfillment of a single desire. What Neville is teaching you is not just a technique. It is the revelation of who you are. You are not a small, limited, separate self who must beg reality to give you what you want. You are not a small, limited, separate self, and consciousness is the only reality. The entire world, every person, every circumstance, every event is your consciousness made visible. And if that is true, and I tell you it is, then you are not trying to get something from the world. You are simply choosing what version of the world you will experience by choosing the state of consciousness you occupy. The end is not something outside of you that you must reach. The end is a state of consciousness that you enter now, in imagination, and by entering it, you make it real. This is the great secret. This is what Scripture has always been trying to tell you, and what Neville spent his entire life explaining. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am, not he, not some distant God. I am. You are. Your own consciousness is the creator. Your own imagination is the workshop of creation. And when you realize this, truly realize it, everything changes. You stop searching for validation from the outer world. You stop waiting for mission. You stop asking how, because you know that the how is not your job. Your job is simply to be, to assume, to occupy the state. And the outer world, which has always been nothing more than a reflection of your inner state, shifts to match. You are not manifesting. You are not attracting. You are simply being. And being creates. This is not a process of becoming something you are not. This is a process of recognizing what you already are, have always been, and can never stop being. You are the operant power. This is a process of recognizing what you are. You are the one who chooses, not through effort, not through struggle, but through assumption, through daring to claim the end before the outer world confirms it, through living in the wish fulfilled while the bridge invisibly builds itself. And the reason the end holds the key is because the end is the state you are choosing to be. The end is not a point in time. It is a point in consciousness. It is the feeling, the knowing, the inner conviction that it is already done. And that conviction, that state, that assumption, contains within it every event, every circumstance, every conversation, every encounter that will bring about its own fulfillment in the outer world. You do not create those events one by one. You create them all at once by entering the state. The state is the seed. The outer events are the tree that grows from it. And you do not need to know what the tree will look like before you plant the seed. You only need to know what the tree will look like before you plant the seed. You only need to tap. You only need to assume the end and trust the process. So who are you really? You are not the person defined by your past. You are not the person limited by your present circumstances. You are not the person who must figure out the how before you can have what you want. You are infinite consciousness, pretending for a moment to be a separate individual. And the moment you remember who you are, the moment you stop pretending and start assuming, you step into the creative power that has always been yours. The power to imagine, the power to assume, the power to imagine, the power to assume, the power to be. Neville said again and again, the world is the perfect mirror of your inner state. But if you do not like what you see, you do not need to change the mirror. You only need to change the state. Step into the end. Assume the wish fulfilled. Let go of the how, and watch as the world rearranges itself to match the one you have become in consciousness. This is not theory. This is law. It is the law of consciousness, the law that governs all of creation, whether you are aware of it or not. But now you are aware. Now you know. The end holds the key. The end contains the means. The end is not something you reach after a long journey. The end is the place you start from. It is the state you claim now in imagination, and by claiming it, you make it so. Not someday, not when conditions are right, not when the bridge appears. Now, in consciousness, and then the bridge builds itself, and the outer world catches up, and you walk through the door that was always open, that you simply had not yet dared to step through. So the question is no longer, how will I get what I want? The question is, am I willing to assume I already have it? Am I willing to occupy that state, to live in that end, to think from there rather than of there? Am I willing to let go of control, to stop searching for the bridge, and to trust that the bridge is already assembling itself the moment I claim the end? Because if you are willing, if you dare to do it, the entire structure of your reality will shift. Not because you have manipulated anything, but because you have become the one for whom it is already done. And the world, which is yourself pushed out, has no choice but to reflect that. The end holds the key. Not the beginning, not the middle, not the journey. The end. And the end is here, now in your consciousness, waiting for you to claim it, waiting for you to step into it, waiting for you to claim it, waiting for you to step into it, waiting for you to be it, and allow the bridge to assemble itself as it always does, perfectly, invisibly, effortlessly, in response to the state you choose to occupy. Tonight, as you fall asleep, do not let your mind wander into worry or planning or questioning. Construct the simple scene that implies the wish fulfilled. Feel it, loop it, fall asleep in it. Let that be the last thing your consciousness experiences before you drift into sleep. And then tomorrow and the day after, that return to it, not with strain, not with doubt, but with the quiet, calm knowing that it is already done, because in consciousness it is. And the outer world, which follows the inner, will show it to you in time, not your time, not the time you think it should happen, but in the perfect time, the time that matches the fullness of your assumption. You do not need to see the bridge. You do not need to know the how. You only need to occupy the end. And when you do, I promise you, the key turns, the door opens, and you walk through into the life you have been imagining. Not because you earned it, not because you figured it out, but because you dared to assume it was already yours. The end holds the key, and you hold the end. Right here, right now, in your own wonderful human imagination. Go now and imagine. Dare to assume. Let go of the how. And discover for yourself what Neville knew beyond all doubt, that consciousness is the only reality, that assumption hardens into fact, and that the end, the beautiful, glorious, already finished end, contains everything, everything. The bridge will build itself. Walk across it. It was made for you.